So after his base, until now, the Rebbe summarized the Maimer of the Fidige Rebbe till Ois Yud Beis, which is this year's Maimers. Let's continue now. Bizbuz Ba'itzeres, that's the general theme. And what is the Oitzer that is given? This is the Nukuda. What's the Oitzer that's given to the officers, which they have explained in another Maimer about the Rabbi, who then give it to the soldiers? That's you and I. So this is the Oitzer, it's a Lashon Chazal, Oitzer Shel Yireh Shemayim. There's a treasure house of Yireh Shemayim. That's Yireh Shemayim is referred to. So what is this Oitzer L'mayla? So the Oitzer, to understand that, and this is the whole Maimer, is going to be Medayik, is to understand the Lashon in Tikkun Zohar about the Ein Sof, that it is L'mayla Mayla ad ein ketz, or L'mata Mata ad in tachlis. Higher, higher without end, and low, below, without tachlis, without ever fathoming its end. So Mamshich, that's what's coming down on this base. Mamshich levay b'sifyud base, ashech l'shan shtase l'tayud base. So it continues in the Maimer, which is shayches to the 12th year. This was Tafshin Chav base, the first 12th year. Proti advarim being an oitzer l'mayla, the details of what is meant by the oitzer, the treasure house, the stored, hidden treasure. Treasure house is not the right word. It means that hidden treasure, l'mayla. We learned this. We learned this. So the shaila here, the Rebbe asked in base is as follows. What does he say? He defines the moshel is like an oitzer that the king doesn't use for his needs. He ejalavet means to say he has pity on it, doesn't want to use it, and will only use it when the realm is at stake. So the Rebbe shaila was, how could there be something higher than the king's needs? If the king's needs, then take everything is available. Why would there be something that the king needs that even the king himself doesn't touch? On the other hand, what will cause the king to use this treasure is dafka the menagid. It's not starting with him. That's the shaila. His needs that he has, irrespective of a menagid, no, he's not going to touch this. Why not? It's yours. What's going to cause him to in the end even squander the oitzer is dafka the menagid. That's the shaila. So he says, he's kind of saying that the beer of the Fidige Rebbe is going to answer this question. So to understand the oitzer l'mayla, again, this statement, this maimer Tikkun Zohar. So after is gimel, v'hinei be'oyer insof yeshnei pirushim. There's two perushim in the term oyer insof. We have to understand just at the outset that the term oyer, this is the term that Mekabolim gave to describe the Eibishter's revelation. Be'emes, even oyer ein sof baruch hu seems to imply, but the mind will actually address this, the Eibishter himself. Upon him, the earlier Mekabolim didn't use the word oyer, that came later. Before that, they spoke of Shefa, but the Achra, the decision was to describe the Eibishter's revelation b'shem oyer. We'll see why it's kind of addressed here. He mentions here the difference in this ois between oyer and Shefa, which we'll see in a moment. So what does oyer ein sof mean? Pirusha aleph, two pirusha. Oyer shel ein sof, an oyer that emanates of the ein sof, as if to say the ein sof is the mocker, is the Eibishter. Or Pirusha Beis, which is what the Fidige Rebbe is saying, Shoyer Atzmahu Ein Sof, that the oyer itself is Ein Sof, carrying Kavayochel, the properties of the Eibishter himself. What we're speaking about here, about the oitzer, we're speaking about the Maimer Tikkun Zohar. Well, plunged into darkness. Hakavona he shoyer atzma bechinas ein sof. The oyer itself is ein sof. Tamadov, and the reason is as follows. Here the Rebbe addresses this point, namely, it's ein sof. This is the atzmos. He says, even the term ein sof is not a reference to Atzmos, but refers to Eibishter's revelation And higher still, okay, Shem and Eir is a whole sugya. Each one is a mile, but there's a mile in name, even on Eir. Name more bottle, and on the one hand, and more expressive on the one hand of the person that even in Eir. And for our purposes, in Kama Pratim, they one thing which he doesn't go into, and we shall not eat it. At any rate, so what did you say now? That the Loshen Ein Sof itself goes on the Eir. Rameh is the Rameh is a Makubal, Mipano. The Ayin is a Zarya, and the member forgot to create a Moishe, a Motche. Moishe. So it was a Makubal, an Italian Makubal. Bagdoma besefer Yonas Elam besefer Placharim from the Hill Parish. So there they bring the following Shaila. Lama Nikra Eir Ein Sof. Why is the Loshen Eir Ein Sof? Shalachayre. That's the standard Loshen, even to the extent of Ein Sof Baruch Hu. The Lachayre Hayaroya Likroise Ein Leit Chila. Not that he has no end. Of which there's nothing that precedes him. And that includes infinite. If nothing precedes him, nothing, he is not caused by anything, just fundamentally is. So Bavadi and Nitzchi means he's eternal. So Bachlal Kadman, Bavadi Nitzchi, Ava Bachlal Nitzchi and Kadman. If you say something is eternal, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a source. It doesn't mean it's primal. And he goes on to illustrate. The Fisha Sichlim Dolim means a general reference to higher forms of malachim. Translation: Sichlim Dolim, aware intellectual creatures, nivdolim, removed from our world. More broad statement. There are nivroim because he must be alluding to Dvarim Gashmi. And Chassidus says from Chazal that the sun and so on is chazakim kiyemi bottom. They remain undiminished, unchanged. How that jives with science that said it's getting weaker. The Rebbe addresses that. Upon him, so these creations, they're eternal by God's will. They have no end. Even though there is a beginning, they're being brought into beginning. In fact, every moment they're brought into being from something from nothing. I know, meaning they have a beginning. So that's the Shaila of the Mekubalim, and brought down in Placharim of the Gil Parisha. Why is the Loshen referring to the Eibishter as Ein Sof? Rather, it would be more accurate and truer to say Ein Litchila. V'tiret, and the answer there is Ma'ash on the Kedem Ein Sof. It's takanot atzmos. Ein Ritzayin Nulaim. Ein Ritzayin Nulaim Balatayim Mahus Vatzmusay is Alachas V'Shalom. It's not a description. It's a description. Ein Sof. Without it saying something. So this is not a description of the Eibush himself. Chas v'shalom. His name implies already otherness, something else that calls you by the name. So in other words, the way the Eibush reveals himself to otherness, the whole idea of otherness is a creation to begin with, a decision to begin with. Just to elaborate for a moment, in halacha, there's this notion of gite v'yoda boin ke'echad, that a woman, without going to pratim here, in order to receive the get, has to be a separate entity to be able to receive the get. So the get, divorce, creates a receiver, and also simultaneously creates the get, whatever the halachic considerations there are. A similar idea is also that the idea of Eir Ein Sof, the whole notion of Eir Ein Sof, simultaneously gives rise to the notion of otherness on the most sublime level. You're saying Eir, revelation. Revelation already implies, right, to something, to other, at whatever level that is. So therefore, Eir Ein Sof is not referring to Atzmos, but it's already what David says, Gilui. Shu B'chinas, his name, a name again, a name is something you need, actually you don't need, but a name is something for an other to reference you, to call you. So the idea of otherness. So that, so the Chiddush is that this Gilui, and this Gilui implicit in Gilui, the whole notion of Gilui means otherness, this itself is Ein Sof. Given so since we're saying that this, that's the Chiddush to Tikkun Zohar, that the Eibusher's revelation is above without end and below without fathoming. There's no limitations. Are you moving? This is the vote of the Fidik Rebbe, the second Pirush in Eir Ein Sof. So Eir Atzmi B'chinas Ein Sof, and this is going to explain that the Eir itself is infinite in the truest sense. Even though it has a tchila, paradox. It has a tchila. But since Oir Me'ena Moed is going to explain in the next ois, it carries the property, it carries the faithfully and accurately and transparently, it carries the property of the Eibishter who ainly tchila and is above all description, as we're going to explain. The fact that we are talking about God this way, we're entertaining the asking discussion and giving the answer, should it be ainly tchila? How do we know this? Why? This gufa, because the Eir carries this truth. Meaning, the Eibush has chosen to reveal his presence such that he can be known. Ad kedekach, known by us, here, right now, learning this Maimed. The emphasis that this is the Chiddush of Chassidus. This is not because of intellectual academia and probing. Mekabolim, Chassidus was Megala the Indian, because now is the time the Eibush says, now I want you to get to know me intimately as Achana for B'yas HaMashiach. Let's continue. It explains in the Maimed, I don't see anybody. Everybody's still here. Yeah. So why Taka? What does it mean? That the Eid itself is Taka Ein Sof in the truest sense. Well, the fish, meaning it carries the property of Ein Litchila even. Well, the fish because Eid is Me'ein Amoed. It's the translation. If you can even translate it so easily. Eid is of the Mo'ed. Me'ein Amoed, similar to, it is nothing other than it expresses purely in an unadulterated way the Moed, which is now going to elaborate. Bazek, Abu B'Makemacher, there's a Makemacher. Kanizan. Samavov. Shein in the Shoir Atzma Yehuba B'chinas Ein Sof. This that the Eid itself is Ein Sof. It's an inherent contradiction. On the one hand, we're saying that the Eid is only a reflection, a glimmer. How can we say that it is true? Sort of, a little bit. Why doesn't he ask it straightforwardly, directly? It has a tchila. It starts with a moed. So how could it be truly Ein Sof? The chura, that is the shaila, but we need to probe deeper to understand why he phrases the question this way. But that is the question. There's no limits at all in both directions, as it were. So how are we calling it Ein Sof? In the truest sense. That not that it comes from the Ein Sof. The second Pirush, that the Eid itself is Ein Sof. Ein ze mitzad atzma. It's taka, not within the purview of the revelation itself to be truly limitless. Let's read a few words, we'll try to understand. Because the Eibishter is truly infinite, and the Eibishter has chosen to express himself, and even though expression, ha'ara, by definition, is limited, certainly limited in the fact that it has a beginning, but since the Eibishter chooses to reveal himself, then in that revelation carries the truth of him in his true Ein Sofness, that Ein Leitchila, the mile of Ein Leitchila. In summary, God chose to reveal himself, and therefore he chose to reveal the truth of his being. The truth of his being is Amitis Ein Sof, the true Ein Sof. Ein Leitchila, Ein Lisof. That's carried by the Oid. He now is not going to elaborate on the mile of Oid. I'm going to just get some feedback. Guys, yeah, a little bit, let me see. Yeah, we're good? Okay.
We're here.
Everybody's here. Oh, Mandela, good to see you. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay. In the Yadua, it's known Shamoir Yochali is Bay Shemei Hamoir from the source. For our purposes, Moir equals Atzmos. Even though there's a distinction. The basic distinction is that Moir means the decision of Atzmos that there should be Oir. There isn't yet revelation. This is the Ola b'machshava that Nis'ava, Kadosh Baruch Hu Nis'ava b'atzmusoi. So in that Nis'ava is already Geder HaMoed, the concept of Moed, which means luminary, to be revealed to otherness, and that there should be otherness already begins. But for our purposes, they're inseparable, because this is P'chirus Atzmus, Mamesh, that there should be Dir B'tachtoin, that all starts with Inyan, the Geder HaMoed, luminary. So back to the mind. There's two ways of Ashpa. Spoke about this earlier, the yin of Shefa and Oir. Namely, is one way Hashem reveals himself, which it's a metaphor. These terms are metaphors. Light is a metaphor. Physical light. We spoke about this, a famous sikha. Physical, it's not just a borrowed term. It's not merely a borrowed term, but the properties of physical light reflect the properties of Ruchnis, of the Eibishter's revelation. But upon him, that's one way that the Eibishter reveals himself, and the other way is Shefa. Now, Shefa, in its literal translation, Hashpa. What's Hashpa? Hashpa is influence. The difference between Eid and Shefa is Achlik B'nei. The difference being, and there are these both expressions of the Eibishter. Din HaShefa, Ushanimshach Metzias Dovar Mohus Dovar. Shefa actually bestows and gives something. Valderech Mashakosov, Shifas Mayim Techasev. The flow of water will cover you. It's a pasuk there. Here, where is it? In here. The point being, why is he being the pasuk? Because a moshel of hashpa is water. It's water which flows from a source, from a river. So what's happening there? Unlike light, the water itself is flowing from the mayan, from the spring. Is actual, tangible, in this case, physically tangible hashpa. What's the moshel for it? Like the light of the sun. The sun is, and it naturally produces light. Now there's two kinds of ashpa. There's ashpa, as an example. You are, and just being yourself, you inspire. That's Oir. You're not engaging the makabel. You're not teaching. Teaching is ashpa. Teaching is putting into oisius and words that the makabel will be able to understand, And a true teacher has got to truly invest himself in the kelim of the Makabel. So giving over Dvas Seichel, that's Hashpah. Oir is just by the presence, illuminating the environment effortlessly. It's one of the reasons why Bechlal is brought down in Samachvov and other places, why the Mekabolim in the end chose the basic term to be Oir. One of them is the effortlessness for the Eibishter. To call it Shefa would imply, because Ashpah changes the person. Mashpia. It changes the Makabel more so as well, if you're engaged with Pnimius. But it changes the Mashpia. The Mashpia is changed, the teacher is changed as a result of teaching. Aside from the fact that he gets tired teaching. It takes koyach, but he changes. That's a chsor that he gets tired. He gets changes for the better. He understands the seichel better by teaching, etc. But Oir is there's no change in the person. He just is, and he radiates. His presence radiates. The fact that he's seen doesn't change him. The sun emanates. The sun is unchanged by the light that emanates from it. Let's continue in the Maimer. So that's one that could. Here he speaks about. Here the emphasis here is that Ashpah is you're giving something, and you're not giving anything. Your presence is seen. That's all. You're not giving. So the light that emanates from the sun is not anything. And it's the light that emanates, so the sun can be seen. And therefore, the fact that it puts out light doesn't affect the change. Nothing changes from the Shemesh. Now, again, just to get back to we spoke about the other day, namely, what is Oir? So classically, Oir is the rays that emanate from the sun. But in a broader sense, it's when you're looking at any object again, what you have in your head is the Oir of the object. It's like a light. Light bounces off the object and enters your eye. That's how you see it. So the fact that you're seeing the light is bouncing off the object doesn't affect the object in any way. It doesn't become diminished that light is reflecting off it. It's in a better moshel and way than the shemesh, because the shemesh is producing, it's the fire that produces the light. And so fire implies some kind of consumption on some level. Upon it, the union of Oir is that the source of it is not diminished, and it's effortless in the light that it produces or emanates or bounces off it, or it produces. In the case of the shemesh that produces, in the case of the object bounces off it from another source of light. The same liquid. So this is the mile of the Oir. Even though it's only a ha'orah, it's not the substance itself. Teacher gives a piece of himself over to the students. In the case of you're not giving anything over, you're doing your thing, and you illuminate your environment. So it's only ha'orah. What do people have of you? What do they know of you? What have you given of yourself? Nothing. However, the mile is but the Oir is conveying the moir. When you're teaching, it's what tzimtzum, and you're giving over that which is shaykh to the makabel. The makabel doesn't have the seichel the way it is in the mind of the Rav. But the way he gives it over, the Rav, a true Rav, it's a tremendous tzimtzum. So the Rav himself is not revealed overtly, at least in the Hashpah. But Oir undisguised, it reveals the moir without compromise, unadulterated. Why? Because Oir is me'in moir. Oir is nothing other than the moir's revelation. Is explained early memory, which we did not learn. This is the shmois of that year. Oir allows us to know the source, the Moir. He was looking at the actual rays. Looking at the rays themselves, we can see if it's emanating from a flame, or from the moon, or from the sun. Here it's mamish, like the classic oil. Not looking at the object, you're looking at the rays that emanate from it. I don't think it's really fundamentally different than what I'm saying. Oil means looking at the object. What you're seeing is the oil of the object. Classically, as you learn, oil is the sun's there, the light is streaming through the window. That's classically what oil means. But what I'm saying, oil means, no, you're looking at the shemesh. What do you have is the light of the shemesh. You're looking at any object. The object is there. What do you have in your brain? It's the light that emanates from it. Upon him, so looking at that light or the image in the language that I'm using, you know whether it's a flame or whether it's the moon or the sun. But to be honest, the way the phraseology of the Maimir is more the classic strahl, rays, and not looking at something as I'm describing it. Okay. I told you I had a debate with the ותשמ about this. I was arguing what I'm saying now. He says, no, it means rays and commandments. So when I explained, we were in the discussion that it's the oil and everything else, it's clear to understand when you realize it's the light bouncing off the object that you're seeing. It's masking. It's true. And that is also conveyed perhaps, but simple language of synthesis, it means the rays, that you're looking at the ray. But we get the point. The point is, that's the mile of Shefa. The mile of Shefa is you've given of yourself. Mamish. It's muhus dava. The water from the Mayan, the ashpa of the Rav. It's a piece of the Rav in the Talmud. The Isle of Moir is. It's not giving you anything, but you can see everything. You're connected to everything. For another minute. So we start the next ice. Okay, so this will continue tomorrow.